Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the most short-windedness recap and analysis available anywhere on the web. Today, we are going to be checking out season 2, episode 3 of House of the Dragon. This episode is called The Burning Mill. And of course, before we get too far into the scene, we always have to start with credits watch. I'm not going to go through the entire credits, but I do want to make a special note that I was, in fact, correct in my last analysis. See the video for season 2, episode 2. They did not want to spoil an event that happened in that episode, and that's why the credits were not updated. So let's just take a look. Here we can see where the update begins. This is the new piece of tapestry that is being unfolded, and of course, it does show little Jaehaerys in his funeral shroud and, some symbolism, some light symbolism. But just seconds later, what starts to unfold is the consequence, the 100 rat catchers that were hanged for the murder. So I think what largely happened is that they probably have this as one full piece of the animation because the two events kind of really go hand in hand. So having the updated funeral shroud, I guess you could have separated the two, but they really are kind of intertwined in one event. So updating the introduction or the opening credit scene, the opening scene to include little Jaehaerys without having the rat catchers, I can kind of get that you need both pieces to tell that bit of the story. And that really seems to be why it was not separated. I think that's exactly what they wanted to do. They didn't want to tell one piece of the story without the other, so it is all kind of interwoven in one piece of tapestry. So we open up in the Riverlands, and you can see immediately one of the oldest conflicts known to Westeros, the Brackens and the Blackwoods. They're already sizing up, they've already chosen sides, and they're looking for any reason at all to fight. So the Brackens, they're just hanging out, having some fun, and the Blackwoods come over and they have decided to accuse them of moving some marker stones. And again, this is not what it's really about. It's really about just them being Brackens and Blackwoods. They will just literally find anything to fight over. So it starts going back and forth. Then they start bringing in the sides of the conflict. Obviously, one is with Rhaenyra and the other one is sided for Aegon. And it starts to escalate. Now, of course, the result of this, the fight itself, it doesn't happen. Who actually unsheathed their sword first? It really doesn't. These two families are just always looking for a reason to fight each other. And the result is bloodshed, needless bloodshed. These are two of the largest armies in the Riverlands. And you can see that from all of the destruction. Everything's burnt down. There are just bodies everywhere. And the fighting has already started. This is a metaphor for what happens throughout the rest of the episode, that it's kind of that there's already a series of events that have been put into motion. And going through and stopping at this point is probably not going to matter. The reason everyone's fighting is lost to history. When did it start? It doesn't really matter what started it. It doesn't really matter who did what anymore because the motion has already started. And now because the cycle has started, it's going to keep going. This battle was not sanctioned by either side. This battle simply happened because there were two armies that were ready to fight and wanted to fight each other. They say they did it in the name of the crown, but the crown doesn't even know that this is happening till afterwards, and you can see, again, all of the destruction, and there is what the episode is named after, that burning mill. So they lost all of this land, they lost all of this life, they lost all of these resources, and for what? We don't even know what they were fighting over, except for the fact that they were two separate sides that had been set into motion. In the next scene, we can see the funeral for Eric and Arik. And you can hear Jace off screen saying that he sullies Arik. He sullies the grave of his brother. But it's important to know that they were one soul in two bodies. That's always how they saw each other. Even when they were on opposite sides of this war, they deeply, deeply loved each other and they felt that they were one soul inside two bodies. And the only problem, the reason they were divided were that their interpretations of their code of duty, of their sworn oaths. And so it's so sad, and I remember that's one of the most heartbreaking thing that I have seen on TV in a long time was the fight between the two brothers. It was absolutely heart-wrenching. If you do wanna catch my analysis on episode 2, it is already up. I will go back and I will do episode 1 since I haven't posted it yet very soon. Here, they're kinda setting the tone. Rhaenyra is still talking to Jace about the oaths and how the brothers both interpreted their oath differently, and they were both died defending their oaths. Jace, however, you can see and hear in his voice the anger. You can hear that he's looking for a fight. He's still mourning his own brother, and he really, really wants to get down to brass tacks. Rhaenyra, on the other hand, is still looking at the big picture, trying to interpret and read the room. Both of them were defending and were acknowledging their oaths. And so just because they interpreted their oaths differently is why they ended up on the wrong sides. She knows that neither one of them were necessarily bad people or had bad intentions. Obviously, Arik coming over to, murder her in her sleep was a bad intention, but it was not his intention. It was Kristen Cole's intention for his guilt, and Arik was literally just following commands. He didn't want to do it, but he had to because he had pledged to follow, or he had pledged to obey king and commander, and Christian Cole was his commander. Next up to whisper in Rhaenyra's ear is Rhaenys, and she wants to put out there, obviously, that Otto Hightower is no longer in charge because he is a politician. He knows how to play the game, and he would have never allowed this to happen. And we already know that when Otto found out about this scheme, he thought it was a joke, both literally and figuratively. So they know chances are Otto's no longer in charge. Something's going on over there with the Greens, and we need to figure out what it is. Rhaenys is also pointing out that this cycle has started. And again, people are going to forget why they're fighting in the first place. And that is really the theme for this episode is that cycle of violence, that violence begets violence. And before you even know it, it doesn't matter what started it. It's just that it's taken on a life of its own and it's just going to keep perpetuating over and over and over again. So Rhaenys points out that this is not something that just started because Rhaenyra's throne was usurped, which is what Rhaenyra keeps fermenting on. She keeps ruminating on. She keeps saying that this is all because they stole my throne. But Rhaenys is saying, is it? Or is it further than that? Does it go back to all the way when Luke took Daemon's eye? If the kids had a better relationship with each other, would this have escalated so quickly? If the kids had been raised to be more cooperative between the two families, if the parents had not taught and ingrained the cycle of hate into the children and passed it on to the next generation, would this still be continuing now? Rhaenys at this point is really encouraging Rhaenyra to reach out and talk to Alicent and communicate with her. And Rhaenyra reflects on how Alicent had first made up with her and they had started to repair their friendship at the end of, I believe, episode 8 in season 1. They had begun to repair their friendship, and she had said, "When come back right away, let's spend some more time together, like, let's make this work." And Rhaenyra was supposed to come back, she was gonna take her family home, she was gonna hop on her dragon, and she was gonna fly back, and they were going to work on repairing that bond between them. But it didn't happen, and then Viserys passed away, and then Alicent seemingly was a huge contributor into stealing the crown from Rhaenyra. I have to say, as a side note, because I love my tangents. I feel like this episode is really setting this is not a book spoiler at all. I feel like this episode is really setting up Rhaenys to almost be Rhaenyra's hand. And I would kind of love that. I think Daemon would lose his shit. But, they're kind of not on great terms anyways after last season got, close to a little grabby again. So that is my kind of wonder. Let me know if you got that impression as well down in the comments below. I don't know if it's just because Damon and Corlys are not here, and so those kind of more experienced heads are not around to help guide Rhaenyra, but I really feel that with Rhaenys, and I think that that would be so wonderful if Rhaenys became Rhaenyra's hand. Again, I don't know who does. This is not based on anything in the books. This is me and my own little theorizing. But let me know right now, as of how things stand right now, who would you like to be Rhaenyra's hand? Down in the description, and we can have a whole conversation about whether Daemon deserves to be hand at this point because he's got his own little side quest going on. So Rhaenys is talking about how Alicent had pulled her aside, pulled her. I'm using air quotes, okay? Forgive me that you can't see them, but pulled her aside when she trapped her into her room after Viserys's death and tried to talk to her about avoiding this war. So Alicent knows what's going on. Alicent wanted to and appealed to Rhaenys to help her stop this war from starting. And so Rhaenys hasn't forgotten that, despite the fact that she did not choose Alicent in obviously the battle. She has not forgotten that Alicent did not want bloodshed and wanted to find a way around it. And so she is trying to remind Rhaenyra about that Alicent might be a good ally if we can just reach her. So they're still discussing whether Alicent had a part in all of this, whether we're talking about the Luke incident, whether we're talking about the Eric Arik incident. They're discussing whether Alicent had a part in it or whether she could have stopped it. And Rhaenys is pointing out that the women, although they are given a seat at the table in the situation, it's not necessarily respected. So she's saying that Alicent probably had as much involvement in these decisions as you did with Jacaerys, which was none. Rhaenyra didn't know anything about what was happening with Jacaerys. However, Daemon took it upon himself to interpret her instructions how he felt like it, because remember, she wanted Aemond, not Jacaerys. But Daemon went and kind of hired a couple of incompetent no goods, who I'm not even too sure that he expected them to be able to get the job done. I think he just sent them as a warning, like 100% expecting them to fail, but they would have been caught and they would have known that Damon got inside the castle. But that is an argument for another day. But what she's saying is that you didn't actually have a hand to play in it, but you emboldened Damon to believe that he was doing something that he perceived as noble. Where Damon's a sticky. He's a sticky wicket. He's hard to interpret there. But because Damon's on your side, his actions are still your fault. Even though you didn't know what he was up to, you're still responsible for his actions because it was done in your name. And that is the unfortunate part of being ruler, is that even though you don't want these things to be done, they are still done in your name. Therefore, they are still yours. They still belong to you. I do think it is very an interesting theatrical element that we are looking down on the twins as they're getting buried. And then we immediately go up toward looking up at Christian Cole. And he really does have this menacing look on his face. And ever since last episode, every time we look at him, he has one of those like staring off into the distance, dissociated looks in his eyes. Like he's not fixating, he's not focusing on anything. Like he's obviously lost in thought and he's obviously almost spinning out of control in his mind, trying to rationalize or trying to make up for what he has done. Because remember, at the end, he said that there is no making up for what he's done. And in saying that, when we do pull out, you can see that he wasn't really looking at anything. He is just kind of looking around and lost deep in thought. So we see in this shot that they're putting up the heraldry. They are putting up Aegon's new banners, and they are the gold dragon on the green high tower background. The gold dragon, of course, is for his dragon, Sunfire, which is supposed to be a brilliantly golden dragon. Now, at this point in the story, Christian is not only the Lord Commander, but also the Hand of the King. And so he has some replacements, and you can see the guys that were playing around with King Aegon in the last episode are now Kingsguard, and they are not at all disciplined. You can see the ones just sitting there on on the steps and the other ones kind of leaning, and you can imagine how much this irks Christian Cole because he is so disciplined. Asterisks for the crazy kind of fighting and losing his temper and just going beast mode on a lot of on some people. But that is an asterisk. That is probably because of his intense discipline and just very, what's the word? Repressed. But he worked so hard to fail upwards so exquisitely that the Kingsguard is his highest honor that he ever achieved, and that he is just a common born, and he almost has no right being amongst all of these high lords. And I feel that a lot of that unworthiness still kind of plays around in the back of his head, which is why he is so repressed and so disciplined. And the fact that these new guys just came in and decided to suck up to the king, and that's how they got their Kingsguard positions. And now they're just like sitting on the stairs and leaning and not at all taking this position seriously that so many people aspire to is like really driving him insane. Now, it kind of gives them a look and they do get up and get into position. And I wonder why he doesn't put them through some kind of basic training where he just like beats all of that out of them. But I guess if they are the best friends of the king and they're just taking this job so that they can hang out with him all the time and that's just fun for them and that's what they can do, I guess it's kind of it's kind of hard for him to, like, tear a piece out of them and discipline them if they're just there because they're the king's best friend. So I suppose that that's probably why they get away with just hanging out. So he arrives at the small council room to the meeting late, and the first thing they start doing is first thing he starts doing is criticizing the new knights. And everyone else starts criticizing the need to appoint new knights because he sent Arik off to go and fight Rhaenyra. And they all point out that it was rash and it was a horrible idea, and he's gonna stand by it. He's going to stand his ground, and he is going to defend it, like, to the end. And they point out that this scheme that you had a 1 in a million shot of actually working did not work, and now war is definitely at their steps. And now not only is war gonna happen, like, obviously, war was gonna happen after Jaehaerys, obviously, like, each step brings them closer and closer. But now they don't even have the benefit of surprise in any way. Because again, there's only two people who can command a Kingsguard, the king and the commander of the Kingsguard. So the order for this to happen had to come from one of the two. It had to come from the top. And so Rhaenyra knows, obviously, this was in retaliation, likely to the Jaehaerys incident, and now, like, war is gonna war. They also get into the Bracken Blackwood War, and Aegon's trying to take it as a win, but of course, it was needless bloodshed. It was needless losses on both sides. And so it was not a win, despite the fact that you want to take it as such. So in this scene, it shows an immense amount of conflict between the small council. Everybody has their own opinion on how things are going to be done. Everybody wants a different approach. One person wants to go and approach Lord Grover Tully, who is the head of the Riverlands, and make him have the internal warring in the Riverlands stopped. Orwell wants to unite the armies. They all have different ends that they want to get to. Christian Cole wants to go and just take all everybody he can grab that's already in King's Landing, head down there, take over Harrenhal, and start beating on each of these individual armies and make them flip sides. These are all rash moves, and nobody can decide on what to do. And even Alicent tries to point out this is rash. You would be better to wait for us to be able to get the Lannisters and Hightower on our side. Her other son, Daeron, can fly out with his dragon and meet them, and then he can have more support and by additional men and a dragon. But Christian doesn't want to. He wants to just go down there, run down there quickly, and use time for his side. The problem with that is, again, it's another rash choice. And she points that out, just like sending Arik on a one man suicide mission. Instead of sitting there and debating with her, he tries to go over her head to Aegon. And he's like, Aegon, what do you say? Me or your mom, who's a woman? And Aegon, of course, sides with Crispy. They also talk about sending Vhagar out there. And Crispy says, "No, no, we're gonna leave Vhagar here. It's fine. He's gonna stay here. He's gonna defend the city because who's gonna defend the city with me gone?" And then Aegon's like, "All right, then I'll go." And they're like, "No, no, 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 no. Like, just I'm just gonna go by myself. You stay here. Don't you worry. You stay here, play with your friends. Figure out your Kingsguard situation. I'm just gonna go by myself." I do want to point out this look that Aemond is giving Aegon as he is telling him why he should not go out. "We don't want to risk your life, brother. You stay here, you play with your friends. Don't worry. We'll do the war. Like we will do it. You hang out here. If you take your dragon out there, you are more likely to invite one of their dragons, and then it's going to be dragon upon dragon. We can't lose you." This is what he's saying with his words. But what he's saying with his face is so much more condescending. And Aegon picks up on that. He does almost feel just a little bit threatened. You can see the discomfort in his face. And I love how the actors are portraying this. It's so immersive because you can feel in his face the discomfort. And he's saying, "I'm just as good as anyone else on a dragon. I'm not a complete fuck up. Like, I can do this." But of course, they're still treating him like he's the fuck up. And of course, everyone in the room after this little exchange audibly like shifts in size and the amount of discomfort is palpable. Next, we get a shot of Missaria, and she's out on a terrace and she is watching Sea Smoke, who is clearly restless and in discomfort. I'm wondering if this is supposed to be setting us up for Sea Smoke is lonely and Laenor has passed somewhere and we just don't know about it. He died off screen, which is whatever. If they're just gonna kill him off anyways, I feel like it's such a waste because it really could have been a good villain origin story for Rhaenyra and Daemon's love story. We already know they're not scared to kill off main characters, so I feel if they had Laenor escape this life and go to live the life he wanted just to die off screen, and then they just have somebody take over as dragon or something like that anyways, I feel like that was such a cop out to not anger fans or show only casuals. So I think that that was such a missed opportunity because, yeah, then they should have. And I feel like that's almost a way to let Rhaenyra off the hook of having to like off her husband so that she can marry Daemon. But that is a rant that I will go on if that situation presents itself. But anyways, they are lining up that Sea Smoke is lonely. He's clearly going through something, and I really hope they're not gonna say that Laenor died off screen. Like, that's just such a cop out. I also think it's very interesting that she's sitting here, she's trying to chat with Missaria, and she's clearly uncomfortable about how in distress, I'm just gonna call it in distress, because like, Sea Smoke's clearly going through something. And it keeps pulling her attention. She's trying to sit here and have a conversation with Missaria, but there's clearly something going on with Sea Smoke, and every time he kind of makes a swoop or makes a sound, her attention is pulled and she goes and looks over at him. So it's clearly making her uncomfortable. It's clearly notable to her. I guess like if it were Cyrax, she would probably understand and intuit what it was. Like if you have a dog and he's, showing these signs of anxiety, across different types of dogs or different other people's dogs, you would also kind of recognize those signs. So she knows that something's going on. And I wonder if she has any kind of inclination as to what it is. That is my question because we don't know. We don't speak dragon. So these two are chatting and basically Rhaenyra thanks her for saving her life because Missaria did in fact turn back and warn the guards that there was a fake Eric walking around. And Rhaenyra just wanted to thank her. Missaria, of course, is like, "Don't you wanna give me something?" And Rhaenyra to which Rhaenyra is like, "You want me to give you something?" And Rhaenyra is like, "Yeah, don't you want to give me something?" Well, what Missaria wants is just a place in Rhaenyra's court, so I guess she wants to stick around because she is surprised that Rhaenyra showed her grace. She didn't have to let Missaria go. She could have done literally anything she wanted, but she booked her passage to Essos. She sent her on her way. She did not torture her. She was quite kind. And, that is something that she did not expect from Rhaenyra. So I guess now we know from last season that Missaria is concerned with the plight of the common folk. And I guess she looks at Rhaenyra and she's like, maybe I can get some good done through her. Perhaps she will be a good leader or a good ruler of the common folk. And maybe if I stick around, I can actually make some of that difference that I wanted to all those like for the last several years. Here's where she's talking about how she does not know why Sea Smoke is restless. And I don't believe her, just how she says it so flippantly. Sea Smoke is restless of late. We cannot know why. I feel like she's trying to dismiss the question and move on. Something tells me I feel like Rhaenyra knows, maybe not for a fact, but intuitively what's going on with Sea Smoke. And Missaria says maybe he's lonely. And of course, Rhaenyra does not at all respond. She just walks off. So yeah, I feel like Rhaenyra knows what's going on with Sea Smoke. I feel like we are supposed to, intuit that he's lonely and he wants a new rider. And so there's probably a new writer coming. Again, this is not spoilers for the book. This is just what I'm reading about how things are getting set up through the episode. And I love that they're setting things up. I love that they're not just going to be like, oh, yeah, here's like they're reintroducing Sea Smoke. So obviously, you bring him into frame, if you start talking about him, if you reintroduce him as a character, something's gonna happen with him. Like, obviously, he's going to become part of the story again. But again, because only a dragon can only have one rider at a time, and his rider is off gallivanting in Essos, how are we gonna make this happen? The next scene is between Rhaenyra and Rhaena. Here, she is explaining her plans for her little kids. Now that kids are entrenched in this bloodshed. She does not want to risk her own any more than she has to. Her side has gotten into the Red Keep, the Greens have gotten into Dragonstone. Nowhere is safe anymore. So the plan is to send Joffrey, who is the little guy. I think he looked like 6 or 7 in the last scene in Lucerys's funeral scene when we saw him. She's going to send him to go foster in the Eyrie with her cousin, Jane Eyre. And remember, she said that she would give her army in return for a dragon. So her and his little hatchling, which I'm sure that's not what she thought. I'm sure she thought it was going to be a much larger dragon that could actually defend. So it'll be interesting to see how she responds to getting a hatchling along with the little boy. And that's a whole other complicated thing because in the Game of Thrones series, the Eyrie was impenetrable or impregnable because it was up in the air, but now we have dragons in play. So a dragon could definitely get to the Eyrie. And without a full-size dragon of their own to defend it, it's going to be interesting because that's not really off the table for Joffrey to get captured from there. So then she goes on to say that Rhaena will go with her little Viserys and her little Aegon, because remember, we're just gonna keep using these names over and over and over again. And then she wants them to go to Essos. And she wants Rhaena to essentially play figure to the boys because she's not able to. And that there's nowhere gonna be in Westeros that are gonna be safe. So she wants to send them all the way over to Essos, where hopefully they will be shielded from most or all of this conflict. It's going to take some serious commitment to get over to Essos, to get to the Prince of Essos. I think it's Prince Reggio to get the two little toddlers, essentially. And hopefully, Rhaena, who doesn't have a dragon, remember, can take care of them and they all three of them can stay safe over there. It's also important to note that this Prince Reggio is not Rhaenyra's connection. He's Rhaena's connection. So they're all as a group going to go to the Eyrie. And then she wants Rhaena to write to Prince Reggio and ask if he will take her and her younger half brothers. Reina notably does not say, "Oh, that's where I grew up." She says, "That's where my mother died." So that's how she associates Pentos. That is a place of danger and death, and she does not have happy memories of that. She's clearly very unhappy about this because she feels like she's being treated just like the toddlers. Like, because she doesn't have a dragon of her own, she is being grouped with the babies and shipped off to Pentos. One of the other takeaways I got from the scene that was very notable is that up until now, we haven't seen too much interaction between Rhaenyra and the girls. We got a little bit of a scene last episode with Rhaenyra and Bela, and it seemed cordial enough. I did point out that she seems okay and ready to risk the life of Bela, but not of Jace, her son. And that did bother me a little bit. But I do get that he's the heir, like he's her heir, but then she's supposed to be the queen. Like they're still married, they're still kind of a pair. But I kind of gave that grace. This time, you can really see the stark difference of how she gets along with her sons versus how she gets along with her stepdaughters. She is so curt and cold with Reina. And I get that this is a hard conversation and you might want to harden your heart and shield yourself from the emotional reaction of Reina because it's you're already hurt. You're going to hurt any either way, but maybe if you harden yourself just a little bit, it won't hurt as much. Now, on the other hand, this is so stark compared to how loving she is with her sons. So here's the question. Is she hard on these girls because they are not her daughters? Even though supposedly, now they have not gone too much into this in the show. Supposedly, she had a very close relationship with Lena. You did see that when they traveled to Driftmark for Viserys to ask Corlys for Rhaenyra and Leonor to marry. You could see that Rhaenyra and Lena did have quite a warm relationship, and they did come into contact a couple of times, and they had a seemingly warm relationship. And that 10-year stretch where they do kind of really get to be close and raise their kids together was written out of the show, so you didn't get to see that. But in the canon, Rhaenyra and Lena had quite a close and a warm relationship. And so you wouldn't think that there is a jealousy aspect of, they're not my daughters or they're the daughters of someone, some ex that I don't like. And so I do find it very, very notable how cold she is with the girls. Now, is that because they are not her girls? Is that because they are not her children directly? Or could it be that if we recall back to her mom, she had a warm relationship with her mother, but she did not enjoy her lot in life as a potentially royal bride. Up until when her mom was still around, she thought that she was just going to be married off and forced to bear children. And that's what her mom was trying to teach her that royal wombs were all about. And then she was kind of promoted to heir, and she knew that she would then be a ruler and she would have her own kind of place in society and place in the palace, and she was the crown. And so we saw before that, we did see how much she pushed against the idea of just being a woman and just raising and rearing and bearing children and how much she hated that. So does she see that position reflected in Reina or what? Like there has to be more to this and how cold she is with Reina and with Bela as well. Because when it was just the one when she was sending Bela off on the scouting mission, I noticed it, but now with Reina, I really notice it. Or is it because she's mad at Damon and she's taking it out on their daughters? I don't know. Let me know. Let me know what you think. Can I just say how much I absolutely love all of the dragons and how personal they are and how distinct they are all, so much more so than in the original series. In this one, I love it. Like, look at that. Even this point of view, I absolutely love it. Absolutely gorgeous. I have to say, he is not wearing his murder cloak today or his no goodie. So maybe this sequence of events will have a good outcome. So Damon lands at Harrenhal and he is doing his best sneaking impression. He's got his sword drawn and he's ready to fight. Like he's got all of this pent up anger from his argument with Rhaenyra and he's ready to take it out on the first poor soul he runs into. But it's Harrenhal, so it's hardly a run down, destroyed, dilapidated castle. And unfortunately, there's nobody to run into. I do think it's interesting, and they keep showing this symbolism of all of these weirwood roots that are growing throughout the foundation of this castle. Here we are at the Great Hall, and you will remember this from the very, very, very first scene where they did the whole history. This is where Jacaerys, the conciliator, held the huge Lord what is it called? The whole heir election where they chose between Viserys and Rhaenys. So this is that same castle. It's massive. It's the largest castle in Westeros, and that's why and it's centrally located right in the middle of the continent. So that's why it is so valuable. It's huge. It's massive enough to garrison a massive a number of soldiers or and armies, and it's central enough to be able to hold them and garrison them and send them off from a central location to be able to go and do wars in the different areas. So it's a really good strategically advantaged place. Strategically advantaged. There's a massive strategic advantage to having this location. There, nailed it. And that's why both Damon and Crispy are running out here to try and claim it first. Here we can see the dilapidated, worn out banners of of House Strong. Remember, Sir Loras is the Lord. He is still in the capital at the Red Keep, doing his sneaky things, you know, torturing the king's enemies and whatnot, but he is technically the lord of this castle. You may also remember that he last season burnt his family down inside this castle in order to get the lordship, but supposedly more so to help Alicent get Otto back as Hand of the King because she wanted Otto to come back and kind of back her up in all situations. Which one was more of a contributing factor is probably up for grabs. I feel like he was probably like, yeah, I'll do that for you. And this is just kind of a nice bonus. I kind of feel like he was looking for an excuse to do away with his father and older brother. But then at the same time, he doesn't really want to exercise his place as Lord of Harrenhal. So, do with that information what you will. Maybe I just get like bad vibes off of him, and that's why I want to believe that he was like itching for a reason. Maybe I've got him all wrong. Who knows? So Damon does his sneaky walk all through the castle and finally finds people. The very first guy he finds, of course, he grabs, he attacks, and he knocks out and then bursts into the room where everyone is just sitting around having dinner. You can see the look on his face. He's so happy. He's like, finally, like someone I can torture and damage. So he walks in and he announces that he has claimed Harrenhal. He's breached the castle. He has, conquered the forces. The castle now belongs to him. Swear fealty. And this guy's just sitting there, like, getting ready to eat his dinner, like, "Oh, yeah, I guess so. Like, I guess you've claimed the castle." But that's not where it ends. He then gets up, walks over to Damon, takes a knee, and pledges his fealty. This clearly takes Damon off guard because he was really expecting a fight. He wanted a fight. He was begging for a fight. But they just walk over, they're like, "I pledge fealty, like, you can have it. All of this is yours, dude." He also then starts rattling off the menu. Yeah, we're having some venison stew with some peas. And again, this is just perplexing to Damon. I love that absolutely everything in this castle is in a state of disrepair. They did not even bother repairing the seats, like the chairs. It's absolutely everything is destroyed and run down. Like not a single thought was put into improving any part of it in the century since it was destroyed by Aegon the Conqueror. So dinner is served, and Damon is just staring at them like, do you really think I'm dumb enough to fall for this? Because, yeah, he points out that poisoning is probably a very easy way to kill a dragon rider. And they're like, "We already pledged fealty, like, we are on your side, dude. We don't wanna fight. We just wanna sit around and have some food. We just wanna eat some venison. It's well-aged. It's amazing." Compliments to the chef, and Damon's like, "Yeah, I was not born yesterday." Now, here's the thing. They probably know that they're prime real estate, that this castle is going to be taken over and over and over again, that there's gonna be constant warring over this castle because it is such a advantageous stronghold as far as size and location are involved. So I doubt that they are getting particularly invested in their hold of the castle and at this point in time, especially with the war just starting. So maybe they like Rhaenyra. They do make quite a point to discuss how much they hate Larys. But at the end of the day, like Crispy's on his way too, and I bet they expect that. They expect that both sides are going to be warring over this prime location, and so don't get too invested in one side or another. I do find it interesting that this is his uncle, I believe, and he knows exactly who Laris is because he says, like, "I think Laris killed my brother, killed my nephew. I think it was him that did this." And so it's very interesting that his family knows exactly who he is. And yet nobody else has figured this out, especially since if we remember, his father was so honest, not only with Viserys, not only when he was Hand of the King, but also I think he was Master of Coin. His father was so honest throughout his tenure on the Small Council, not only with Viserys, but always also with Harwin's position in court as Rhaenyra's paramour, we'll call him, the father of Rhaenyra's bastard children. And yet we never heard the father's take on Laris. However, now we are back at their ancestral home, or well, Harrenhal, it's nobody's ancestral home. It keeps getting turned over and over and over again. But his family knows exactly who he is and what he's capable of. And I think that that's very interesting. And I wish we could dive more into that. If he was such a scourge on the family, why did his dad take him to court? And why did his dad allow people to trust him? In the first season, it was set up that he was kind of trying to make himself meek and, "Oh, I just wanna sit with the ladies, and I'm not capable of anything because because I'm disabled, and, oh, this club foot of mine. All I can do is sit here and gossip with you and eat cake." And yet, clearly, his family knows that he's so much more than that. We are back. So, while they're having some dinner and talking about how there is no love lost between Laris and the rest of the Strongs, Damon decides to push his luck and dabble in a little bit of light treason. He refers to him as my prince, and Damon quickly corrects him and says, "Your Grace." Now, I love this because this is something that I was discussing last episode, where generally kings, regardless of station, the title king will always outrank the title queen, or at least in a lot of monarchies, in like real life monarchies. And so the question is he going to be a king or is he going to be the prince? With Queen Elizabeth, I was saying, because she was the ruling queen, Prince Philip was always Prince Philip. He couldn't be promoted to king because then he would automatically, simply by title, outrank Queen Elizabeth. So he remained Prince Philip. Now, here, it sounds like Damon is 100% planning on taking the title of king. He's definitely wanting to be called Your Grace. So he does indicate that he is planning on having at least a equal or higher standing then Rhaenyra. This is going to be very interesting going forward. It's interesting that he starts asserting this while she is not around to correct him. So we'll see. I'm gonna have to do a rewatch. Have we seen him go by your grace in her presence? That's the question. Now, the other question is he just doing that because he obviously wants a fight? He's obviously down for a fight and wants to. So I wonder if he's just doing that because he wants the pushback, because he wants the challenge of a fight. So we have a little bit of exposition if you weren't paying attention and you needed a little catch up. They discuss why exactly are you here at Harrenhal anyways? And Daemon, of course, is saying, you're huge. This is the biggest castle in all of the kingdom. You have 40,000 undeclared swords. He corrects them and tells them about the Bracken Blackwood fight and says, hey, like, they're already spilling blood. And the theme is reiterated yet again. Nobody knows why they're fighting. They're fighting because they're fighting. Sin begets sin. Violence begets violence. The cycle continues. Daemon also says that he wants to talk to the Lord Paramount, which is Grover Tully, and to summon him to come down to Harrenhal and speak with his grace. And he's like, "No, that's not gonna happen. This guy, he's old and frail and feeble. He's not gonna come here." And to be honest, he's probably not really in control of his people anyways. He's not even really in control of his bowels. I love all of this circular symbolism as well. This cycle of violence, this big circular table that they're all sitting around. Normally all of these tables, and it's notable because normally all of the tables of the High Lords are these long, elaborate tables. And this one is round and it's elaborately decorated. You can see how it does have the elaborate stonework in the middle, but it's also generally bare. I think that is very much the symbolism of the reasons lost the time. The table is bare. The reasons are lost. They're bare. And that the violence begets the violence begets the violence. So Damon, you can tell very much that Damon's patience is also very much wearing thin. He's asked, what are you gonna do once you start garrisoning this army and getting all of these swords and you repair the castle and what happens next? And Damon says, we're gonna march on King's Landing and we're gonna take the throne. And they're almost taken aback, like, "The throne? Why would you want the throne? We have venison right here." And his response is just, it's a big iron chair made of swords, throne, and it's just I love a bit of sarcasm, and so you have to also just, like, love he's just at his end. He's just like, "Seriously, do I have to explain the throne to you?" So in this next scene, we get Kristen Cole, and he's getting ready to leave and ride out to get to Harrenhal. Everybody's heading to Harrenhal. This is gonna be like a whole big thing, I think. I don't know. Again, this is not spoilers. I don't know what's going to happen. But he is getting ready to ride out there, and he is going to take Harrenhal, which now we know has already been taken by Daemon. And Alicent is chatting away with her brother. Now, you may remember him from season 1, episode 1. Daemon chose him to joust against him at the heir's tourney. And he is almost the mirror image of Sir Christian Cole. And I think that they do highlight that quite a bit, even in their opposites. He has quite light hair. Christian Cole has dark hair. He has darker armor. Christian Cole has lighter armor. I feel like right now they're very much mirror images of each other, like opposite images of each other. And spoiler alert, they don't get along. They do not get along. Christian Cole has no patience for his pamperedness, I guess you could call it. And he obviously looks down on at Christian Cole as a common born and he wants nothing. He feels like he is better and knows better and will do better than Christian Cole just because he is highborn and you are lowborn. They exchange a couple more words, and he is very condescending towards Christian. He kind of mocks his rise from modest means over his father, who has served 3 kings as hand. He mocks the fact that he is a Dornishman and that, he's a common born. So he really has some contempt for Christian, and I'm sure that he really feels like Christian doesn't belong to play at this level, which, arguably is kind of right, but he's really a dick about it. So as hard as it is to like sympathize with Sir Christian Cole, the other dude is just such a douche, Like he's really making it hard to be like, I really want to be on your side because I really, really, really don't like Christian. Like, he's not a great guy, but like, you're not a great guy either. Like, you're annoying. Stop it. So Allison informs Christian that her brother will now be joining him. He tries to push back saying, I have a full complement. I don't know. I don't. And she's just like, well, you're gonna have a fuller one. He's coming. It's not up for discussion. This is how it's going to be. So she does have some room to kind of push things onto people. And I guess, at some point he has to, if he still wants, what's good for him, he's kind of got to let it go sometimes. So he doesn't push back too bad. They then proceed to have the most awkward goodbye in the history of the Game of Thrones universe. They do exchange some pleasantries, and Sir Christian Cole asks her for her favor. And this is very much a callback again to that same episode where they were giving away their favors. I don't remember whose he requested, but now this time Damon had requested Allison's in the first one, and now he's requesting Ellison. So I guess that is him, kind of making up for what could have been the first time. I don't know. But anyways, he requests it. She pulls it out of her brassiere and gives it to him. And they share a little moment. Very little. It's not hot and steamy. Like I said, it's still very much awkward. He is looking at them very knowingly. And I must say, I still hate them. I do not ship them and I will never. As we ride out, we do still see that there are several of the rat catchers strung up on the wall, and that again is just a reminder back of last episode. It's a little bit graphic, so I didn't want to put it up, but if you watched it, it's a little gory. And here you can see all of the troops riding out from King's Landing and headed to Harrenhal. The next scene is Rhaenyra's, I guess, war council, small council. I guess it's very much still a war council because they don't need to govern. They're just simply there to essentially strategize for the war. Rhaenys comes in and she is giving a report. She was out scouting on, I guess, Meleese. She's saying that there's no armies coming, there's no ships coming, nothing's coming, there's nothing out of the ordinary. It doesn't seem like they are marching on Harrenhal. And they're pointing out that that's pretty much a good thing. But then, where if they're not here, then where are they? Now the council so far are kind of starting this argument amongst themselves without Rhaenyra's input. They start talking about taking over the Riverlands, and if Daemon has amassed their army, of course there hasn't been word for him, so they don't know what's going on. And so everybody else starts saying, we need to start sending out these dragons. We need to start warfare. We need to start torching people and really raining it down. But the thing is that these are people who are outside looking in. They don't understand the dragons are a novel tool for them. They don't understand the destruction. They don't understand how once the dragons start coming out, then everything is just burned indiscriminately. They don't understand, like Rhaenyra does, how you think you're controlling these dragons, but again, Viserys warned her that these are a power that should never have been messed with. Rhaenyra is trying to avoid using dragons in this war as much as possible, and she does exert that and try and stand firm on it. But the other council members are so ready to go. There's a moment here where Rhaenyra and Rhaenys kind of exchange a little look because again, they know the power of dragons, and while they are an amazing tool. Once you unsheath that, it's so much easier to pull it out than it is to put it away. Once you start pulling out the dragon and once you start blowing dragon fire all over the place, the dragons don't know and don't care who's on your side and who's not. You're going to have casualties on both sides. Dragons and dragon fire kills indiscriminately. And it's a massive escalation and they do not want to just start pulling them out and using them for basically nothing, basically in the beginning. Also, the sooner Rhaenyra pulls out her dragons and starts using her dragons, the sooner that's going to force the Greens to escalate to using their dragons. And again, they have Vhagar, who is so powerful. So it's almost an understatement to say so powerful, but on the scale of 1 to 10 to, their 9, Vhagar is a logarithmic 10, and it's they don't necessarily want to have to fight Vhagar, not to mention that even all of the other dragons, all of the other ones, once they start coming out, they're all gonna be out, and it's just that the devastation it's going to cause to the land, to the small folk, to the armies is just immeasurable. Now, up until this point, Rhaenyra has been visibly nervous. You can see that she is agitated and uncomfortable with this conversation. And the men start mansplaining her safety. And we all know what's coming up next. So they start coddling her and telling her how she is in such a delicate situation and that she, with Damon gone, with her husband gone and no longer able to be nearby to protect her, that she's in a very, very vulnerable place. And maybe it's time for her to take a step back and go somewhere safe, and they can just conduct the war and all the messiness here without her. And this obviously enrages her because that also is like a little bit of treason. It's like, why don't you just go over there and we'll take care. We will make all of these decisions. And she is obviously not going to deal with that. She immediately puts a step to that, and Rhaenys, as usual, even comes to her defense. So Rhaenys points out that Rhaenyra is trying to be like Jaehaerys. She is trying to take her time and be a little bit more like Jaehaerys, the conciliator. He ruled the realm the longest. He ruled under peace and prosperity, and he was a good, prudent ruler. And he didn't do that by pulling out dragons and going to war and burning everything down. He did that by listening and weighing his options and not rushing into decisions. Yes, Aegon the Conqueror pulled out his dragons, burnt everything down, and took over the continent, but he did not hold it. He did not rule as long as Jaehaerys did. Now, if there is a love story that I can ship in this series, it is definitely the Velaryons. So she is visiting him. She brought him a little bit of lunch, and she is telling him how bloodthirsty and disorganized the council is, and how Rhaenyra is going to need his help, his guidance, his support. And I love that for him. She's in there, she's fighting the good fight, and I really do believe that he respects her. Now, there are some alleged bastards out there, so I'm not sure how much, but we can talk about that another day. But he does seem to he allows her to rule in his absence. He seems to trust and listen to her guidance a lot of time, even when he doesn't heed it, like, she still gets to have her say. So I do feel that as far as these kind of medieval-esque relationships go, like, they do actually have one that is somewhat democratic between the two of them. So the conversation quickly turns to the heir of Driftmark and her saying goodbye to Rhaena. And essentially, they're trying to spitball who the heir should be. Joffrey is technically the heir, but he's like 6 years old and he's a baby. He doesn't know anything about sailing. He's quite literally basically a toddler. And Rhaenys floats the idea of Rhaena. But Corlys doesn't like that either. He also says that she knows nothing about flying or dragons, so she also can't be his heir. And so that basically he'd better not die anytime soon until they can figure this out. So they go through and they discuss their different options for their heir. As we know, Luke was supposed to be the heir of Driftmark, especially after the entire debacle when Corlys was sick and in his coma. We know that there was the entire what was that, in episode 8, I believe? Oh, that was a good episode where we had to go back to King's Landing, and Viserys had to muster all of his strength to show up for his daughter and really go down, and that's when he, like, denied the milk of the poppy, and he showed up to sit the throne that day and hear the petition of Corlys's brother for him to be able to become the new heir to Driftmark. That was such a touching episode. And now, after all of that, after he, lost his life because he decided to drop the bee bomb on Rhaenyra's children, we know that Lucerys came out on top. That was the moment that Rhaenys kind of tied herself to Rhaenyra by betrothing the kids, Luke and Jace, to Rhaena and Baela, and really kind of solidified that they were together in this. So now that Lucerys is gone and that entire debacle happened for absolutely no reason, just so senseless. We have to figure out who the new heir of Driftmark is. Is it going to be Rhaena or is it going to be Joffrey? Right now, it's assumed that it's going to be Joffrey, but he's like 6 years old. He doesn't know how to sail. He's got a dragon, but again, he's 6 years old and the dragon's just a baby. Is that really who we want to put in charge of Driftmark, especially when we're in the middle of war and everything is so incredibly tenuous? Or, as Rhaenys wants, should we give it to Baela? Baela is a little bit older, but Baela doesn't have a dragon, and she also doesn't know anything about sailing, as Corlys points out. So now we're kind of back at square one. What do we even do? And so Corlys kind of hand waves it off, saying, "It's a good thing I'm a good sailor. I'm not ready to die. Nothing's going to happen to me," which, as far as the A Song of Ice and Fire universe goes, that kind of basically means, like, is he even going to be in the next episode? But again, not spoilers. That's just, I have learned to temper my optimism with Germ. The next scene is the departure scene for Baela, and we can see immediately by her kind of far off stare, she is not into being the nursemaid to these little boys. We also have this scene between the sisters where they are saying goodbye, and Reina's not feeling it. She's a little bit upset. I think she feels a little bit jealous towards Baela, who gets to stay behind because she has a dragon. And I get it. She doesn't want to be sent away. She wants to be able to be a part of and support her family. She just lost Lucerys, who she thought that she was going to marry, and that was going to be her husband, and they were going to rule Driftmark together. And they really did seem to be very sweet on each other. I get the incest, but let's look past that for a second. They did seem very sweet on each other. They did seem to be quite close. And now she lost him, who is her betrothed, her fiance, if you want to call him that, also her cousin, also her step brother, and also lost her claim to Driftmark. Like, she doesn't know that Rhaenys behind the scenes is trying to give her Driftmark to rule in her own right. So she's just completely up in the air. Her entire life is completely in question. She has no idea what's going to happen to her. And now she's being sent away by her stepmother because she's of no use to her here. I don't think she realizes the big picture that Rhaenyra is essentially entrusting the entire future of her family to Rhaena, because it's really easy to miss that. She's entrusting the fledgling baby dragons. She's entrusting her babies, her heirs, well, besides like Joffrey, all of her spares, to Rhaena to take care of, to protect, to raise. And it's easy to overlook that and just take for granted that you're being sent away and that you are not seen as any use to the family, which is what I'm sure she's feeling, and she's allowed to feel that. I think it's also very interesting that this is the exact role that Rhaenyra did not want for herself. She did not want to have children. She wanted to be a dragon rider and a warrior rather than, meant to be locked up in a castle and squeeze out heirs, remember. So it's really interesting that she is putting all of this on Rhaena rather than allowing Rhaena to find her own way and find a way to be of service. Next, we see that Rhaenyra is sending eggs along with Rhaena and the boys. And we do see there's kind of like a pewtery light blue one, there's a dark greenish one, there's the red one, and then there's the yellow one. Now, in the behind the scenes, it does say that these are Dany's eggs. And I don't know, I feel mixed. Like, it's not something that I necessarily needed to see. I didn't need for that like, line to be made. I kind of love that who exactly laid Dany's eggs and how they got there. I like that it's kind of a mystery. I don't so it's not something that I needed wrapped up for me, but I get that some people like that. Some people like having the loose ends tied up. So here it is. I don't know. Let me know how you feel about it. I kind of wish that they weren't. I wish that like loop wasn't closed. I wish that it was more left in the air. Are they Rhaenyra's eggs? Do they belong to Syrax? Do they belong to Dreamfire? Do they belong to someone else? I don't know. I don't know. I wish that there was still some mystery to uncover. I guess getting all of the answers, like sometimes you still want to be able to wonder and theorize about where they came from. But anyways, it was confirmed by the director behind the scenes. Yes, these are Dany's eggs. It's not a spoiler or anything like that. And yeah, there are 4 eggs. She's taking 4 eggs with her, and I guess probably the dragon trainers because the 2 dragons she's sending are just little babies and they're very, very vulnerable. Rhaenyra then says bye to her boys, first Joffrey, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. Like I could not even begin to imagine. While she's saying goodbye, you really kind of get that parallel between when Harwin said goodbye to his boys and when now Rhaenyra saying goodbye to her boys. And there was 3 of them. The ages are somewhat the same. Like obviously they're a little different ages, but still the 3 of them, there is that parallel and it just makes you think about that. So it really kind of makes you wonder, are they ever going to see each other again? Next, the sisters say goodbye to each other. And again, if you have siblings or children, you can feel the acting in this is just amazing. The next scene we have is between Alicent, who was just visiting with her grandbaby and is now handing the grandbaby off to the nurse so that she could have a conversation with Helena, who is just arriving. So Helena comes in and she here wants to talk to Alicent about her feelings. She states quite matter-of-factly that she feels sad about Jaehaerys, but that she thinks that maybe she shouldn't because, people die all the time, especially babies. And so maybe she should be getting over this. Alicent, in turn, wants to make sure that Helena knows that you are entitled to your feelings. You are allowed to grieve if you need to, and you should. So they continue to have a conversation, and Alicent is saying that we're all entitled to our grief, and it's just part of motherhood. As a mother, you're going to grieve, you're going to get hurt, and you're always concerned for your children and about your children. Helena thinks that the common folk were probably thinking that she doesn't get to be sad because she is the queen. The queen should not have any right to any grief. And Alicent is trying to explain to her that as a mother, you are, and it's not something that you're ever going to be able to avoid. Now, at this point, Helena abruptly stands up and tells Alicent, I forgive you. And Alicent is taken aback because this is has so many layers. First of all, it tells Alicent that she did do something wrong because I feel up until now, essentially, Alicent has been almost in a state of denial, thinking that she's been in the right. But if we just look at Allison's role in all of this, yeah, she did Helena wrong on several levels. Allison married Helena to Aegon, and Aegon is arguably a horrible person. So she essentially doomed her daughter to this horrible, loveless marriage. If they had just been brother and sister, maybe they could have had a somewhat relationship, but they aren't. And he's a horrible husband. He's not a great person to begin with, and he's a really bad husband. Not only that, but Allison was, doing the dirty with Christian Cole when Christian Cole should have been protecting Helena. Again, another direct kind of thing that harmed her in this sense. But if we actually start looking at the tapestry of what all of their actions wove, it goes so much bigger. If Alicent didn't try and change the line of succession, there would not have been a war to begin with. If Alicent really, really tried to fight this, perhaps there was a way that she could have undone all of this. And she's not the only person. Everybody has different roles to play. Everybody has their own part to play. Everyone has their own fault. Like Viserys, if he really wanted Rhaenyra to be the ruler, as soon as his health declined, he should have appointed her as a regent and taught her how to rule and actually put her in the position as ruler so that there were years of her ruling at King's Landing before he even passed away and actually had to hand the crown down. Then she would be there, she would be in power, and all of this could have been avoided. If he would have married Rhaenyra to Aegon, it would not have been very conducive to having heirs, but it would have avoided this entire issue. And if Alicent would have accepted Rhaenyra's proposal to marry Helena to Jace, Helena's life would be so much different. Jace seems to be a somewhat compassionate person, much, much more so than Aegon. Now, we can argue that he is showing a few signs of hostility right now, but a lot has happened to kind of bring him to that point. If we would have rewound this and we were at the point where we were when Rhaenyra had said, hey, let's marry Jace and Helena, that would bring a high tower right into the line of succession. And that would 100% have put the high towers to be in a position of power that they wanted. That could have stopped a lot of it. And so there are a lot of choices that Alicent made that directly brought us to where we are today. And those are just a handful of them. And these are all things that directly impacted Helena, where Alicent did Helena wrong. Alicent had the means and opportunities on many positions throughout history to stop this all from happening. And if she would have made a different choice on any of those, Helena would have had a much better life and quality of life. She would have had a better husband. She would not have had her children taken from her. Well, her child taken from her. And so, yeah, Alicent did do something wrong. And in this case, Helena forgives her. So, regardless of which Helena is forgiving her for, this immediately tells Alicent that she did something wrong. Helena knows that she did something wrong. Because I think sometimes Alicent feels like Helena doesn't really know or process what's going on, or that she is a robot and unfeeling or something. But here we know that no, she does have feelings. You hurt them and she forgives you, which makes her so much the bigger person. In the next scene, we have Aegon. He's literally in Aegon the Conqueror's Valyrian steel armor. And he thinks that he's gonna go take a little dragon ride and back up Sir Christian Cole. And of course, Twiddledee and Tweedledum, his new Kingsguard, are there and they are cheering him on and they're super excited about his potential riding off into battle. And of course, Laris slithers in the background. So this situation is another one of those where I love the very subtle humor that the writers just kind of slide in there. So the Kingsguard that's blocking the door is like, why are you here? Nobody invited you here. And he comes in, he's like, basically, listen, I'm here to save the king from himself and you guys from basically being torn apart and strewn all across the kingdom. Don't you think that that would be favorable to him, going off and having an afternoon of fun? Because let's face it, anyone with a good strategic war mind knows that whoever brings the dragons onto the field first are going to be immediately met with more dragons. So while the person who flies the dragons out first has a very short, immediate advantage, the retaliation from the other side is going to be much worse. If Aegon flies out there on his dragon, yeah, he has that little element of surprise. But you don't think Caraxes is gonna jump in there and just be like, yes, I have been waiting for a true battle. I've been burning the stepstones for years without a true opposition. And now here I go. And he's gonna be ready. And I'm pretty sure with his already battle experience and, Damon's all over horrid disposition, like Sunfire probably doesn't stand too much of a chance. Now, I'm sure when we get up there, there's gonna be, the element of surprise and yada, yada, yada. Daemon and Caraxes are definitely going to outmatch Aegon and Sunfire, especially if they start calling out other dragons. Because remember, the Blacks do have more dragons than the Greens right now. So if it becomes a dragon on dragon fight with Vhagar stuck in the city, how much backup is Aegon gonna have? Is Helena, in her grief, gonna jump on Dreamfire and come out and help him? I doubt it. She's probably not too happy with him. And is she really going to be that much help in a fight? Is she going to be interested in taking sides in a fight while she's mourning the loss of her son? So this is an excellent scene. Laris basically says, listen, I've been hearing some whispers, two in particular. First, some people say that you are a great and wise king. And they say that you have sent Christian Cole off to go and fight this war and win this war, and that you are a glorious warrior that is flying with them. Now, the other people say that you were hoodwinked, bamboozled by your small council, that they are sending you off to die in this war, and that in your place, the Dowager Queen Alicent is going to rule, puppeted by your brother. So now here we do something very interesting because up until now, Laris has been using Alicent. Well, I don't want to say using Alicent because that jumps ahead. Up until now, he has been siding himself with Alicent and endearing himself to her so that she will rely on him. He's done a lot of things to her, well, to her and with her. And it's really interesting because now you see that he was 100% playing the long game. He had every intention on ditching Alicent from the very moment that he squirreled his way into her circle in the courtyard back when Viserys and Rhaenyra went to Driftmark to propose to, why do I sound say Loras? Oh my God, propose to Corlys. So, or take their proposal to Corlys. So ever since that date, like ever since day one, Alicent has been nothing than a stepping stone or a tool for him to get here. And now he sees how pliable Aegon is. He's already mentioned to him in episode 1, hey, you should watch out for Otto. He was very much the puppet master of your father and kind of planted that seed, watched it grow and watched it explode in Otto's face. And now here he is planting these seeds against Alicent, Aemond. And it's very, very interesting how he's doing that. It's masterful. I love having this new kind of sneaky sly. Like, what? You have to sit back and look, like, what is his end game? And I have no idea. And I love that I have absolutely no idea what his end game is. I absolutely love that. Like, there is an antagonist that keeps you guessing, even though he's not necessarily the big bad. Anyways, Aegon offers himself or offers the position of Master of Whispers to Laris. He says, although my dad didn't think he needed one, I found myself wanting for a Master of Whispers. And Laris, of course, pretends to be absolutely shocked and honored that Aegon would even consider him. But we already know that this was his long game. We already know, without him even giving an inclination, that this was his plan all along, was to get into Aegon's Master of Whispers, at least from episode 1. Again, I don't know what his long game is, and I think that he's a very, very skilled player of this game. So his long game with Alicent in season 1 may not have been his long game now, but I definitely think that he has always been eyeing the small council. Do you find it interesting that this essentially pits, not Missandei, what's her name? This essentially pits Missaria and Laris up directly head to head as combatant Master of Whispers. And considering that there is some indication that Laris may have had some role to play either in Blood and Cheese or in allowing Blood and Cheese to happen, you have to wonder, first of all, who are their ultimate loyalties to? We already know that Missaria's ultimate loyalty is probably to the small folk and bettering their circumstance. But would she betray Rhaenyra or along the way? Like, how strongly will she protect or serve Rhaenyra? And Loras, what is his end game? Like, what is his end game? So now, of course, he plays it off when they say, "Are you ready to go to the dragon pit?" He's like, "No, no, no. I'm not going. I was never going. We were just trying this on. I was just having some fun. Let's do something else instead." Now, again, I love how they give us a little bit of levity after such a heavy scene. So the Kingsguard point out that one of their squires needs some bedding. And Aegon's like, "You do realize that you are celibate, right? Like, that was the oath that you took." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, that was totally serious." And he's, "Yeah, that was totally serious." And of course, it was way serious. And everybody's looking at each other like, was it serious? How serious is he? Like, is he shitting us right now? And they're all trying to, like, read each other. What kind of dynamic is this gonna be? Like, are we still friends? Are we still running around and playing this game? Or do we have to be grown-ups now? But I do love that we finally get to see this full suit of Valyrian armor. I love it. So now we get to go out for a night on the town, and guess who we see? So we get a flashback to episode or season 1 where Aegon goes and assaults sexually one of the maids. And we remember this when Alicent covered it up. She fired her, she gave her the moon tea, and essentially justified what Aegon did and covered it up, which completely should be going again 100% against her morals. But for whatever reason, she thinks it's fine because it's her son. But this is one of those situations where you directly see the outcome of what happens to the small folk when, princes misbehave. She was probably earning a good wage and she was working at the castle, and it was probably one of the better jobs. It was probably fairly safe and less dangerous than, being a barmaid in one of these taverns. And because Aegon decided to act horribly, she lost that job. And now here she is having to, undergo this harassment here in these here parts. And it's just terribly unfair. So here we can see the guys are having a little bit of fun, having a little bit of gossip. So he essentially says that he was the son of Balon the Brave. His grandfather was King Jaehaerys. So Prince Daemon and King Viserys are his stepbrothers, half brothers, and he is the uncle to Queen Rhaenyra. So he seems pretty firmly in Rhaenyra's camp. I would assume that, like, he doesn't really know her, so he's probably basing that more on the fact that Aegon's a little bit of a shit for hanging all of those rat catchers. Because remember, everybody in King's Landing saw him hang like 100 rat catchers just to catch the one. So I'm sure that leaves a pretty bad taste in the mouth of the small folk, especially those who are related to and friends with those rat catchers that were just honest, hardworking dudes trying to live their life and scrape together a paycheck. So he does seem to be pretty much on Rhaenyra's side, and he is a dragon seed, and it's really interesting. He's trying to keep it a secret because it could cost him his head. However, he's telling a complete stranger from Dorne. So, take that what you will. I guess it is a little bit of exposition because they want us, the audience, to know who he is, but it's immediately contradicting because you're telling this secret to a complete stranger, and yet you are trying to be quiet so that no strangers hear you. But okay. They also introduced the term dragon seed, which is I think it's the first time that we're hearing it. So now going forward, we know that a dragon seed is just a descendant from a Targaryen. All of a sudden, everyone stands. So King Aegon walks in and immediately starts buying rounds for the bar. So he starts throwing stuff at his buddies. They're drinking, they're laughing, and the ex-maid, what was her name? I'm gonna have to, I'll have to figure out her name later. She comes in, she pours him a drink, and he doesn't even recognize her, even though she's right there. And this is probably for her, it's probably quite traumatic because, that was such, not only was it a vicious assault, but it was also like a defining pinnacle point of her life that completely changed her future. Not only in that she now has PTSD from being assaulted, but she lost her job and had to find a whole new, worse career over it. So hopefully there are some scenes that I can see this, but the next scene is him basically barging into the brothel on the street of Selk. And he is heading in, and the funny thing is, like, this scene is raunchy, there's no way around it. I'm not gonna be able to, like, show it any like, hardly any of it here. But despite the fact like, he's like, "Oh, yeah, it's so tame, like, it used to be lit in here. Lit AF in here, but now it's you might as well pair it with some warm milk and a nap because this is tame now." So, like, what is he into now? So, he is running through, throwing open curtains and, uncovering all kinds of debauchery that, again, I cannot show here, until he finally throws one open and he sees Damon in the fetal position with Sylvie cradling and comforting him. And again, like, Damon, I hope Amond, and I hope Amond really like, I hope they explore these mommy issues a little bit more because I am very curious, like, there are just things. So anyways, Aegon goes right back to when they were kids and starts teasing him about being with Sylvie, who was his first, and now apparently he's still there. So now David Amond Amond is at a crossroads. He can have this moment with his brother where he, becomes vulnerable, or he can, put up his walls and go back to this tough guy persona. And that's exactly what he does. He essentially says that, Amon's saying that Sylvie must be amazing at her job, wink, wink, because, Amond, who is a prince, still frequents her and her services. And Amond essentially sits there and, thinks on it for a second and makes a choice and just says, "One's as good as another," and walks out. And he, like, walks out bearing full frontal. I was not prepared for this. Now, normally, even though they show a lot of female nudity in a lot of TV shows, it's very rare that they, like, just do the men. And so I was not prepared. I thought I was gonna cut away. I thought there was gonna be, like, a strategically placed shadow or head, and there is not. There is no such thing. So, yeah, you at the same time, I have to say that it does add that much to the confidence that you have to just, like, stand up and walk out and just be that free, okay? But now here is my question. Where are his clothes? Because if they're not in the room, if he did not, like, pick up his clothes in the room, what is he wearing? Where is he going? Like, is he leaving? Is he going to a bathroom? Do they have a spare pair of clothes for him somewhere? Like, I have questions that need to be answered. Like, is he gonna, like, jump on his, like, dragon and just ride buck ass, like, home? Like, where is he going? I need to know. Next, we see Rhaenyra, and she is in her children's room, I believe, and she is holding their toys and crying. She is essentially already grieving the loss of her children, even though they are just a dragon's ride away, but then that would not only give away the location of them if, somebody saw her frequenting the Eyrie and going there to visit her children, it would immediately give their position away. So that's probably not the smartest move. But she also knows that there's a very real possibility that she will not ever see them again, either by them being taken or worse, or by her losing the battle. And you know what Cersei says about the Game of Thrones: you either win or you die. So she puts away the toys and she finds Allison's letter, and she finally brings herself to open it and read it, and then we cut away. The next is another series that I love, which is Allison's brother tries to undermine Sir Christian Cole. They have parked the army in underneath the forest so that scouting parties cannot necessarily see them from above. So dragon riders cannot see them from above because they're under the trees. Gawain has decided that he is not going to camp underneath a tree on the hard ground. He is going to go and find himself and his men an inn. And Sir Christian Cole's like, no, 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 no. You don't understand. And Gawain's like, yes, yes, but I very much do understand. What I want is an inn, a hot meal, and a comfortable bed. And Sir Christian Cole's like, no, 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 no. We stay together on this mission. And Gawain's like, yeah, I'll come back for you and your common born ass later on. And Crispy's like, you're such a dumb fuck. Which he is, but that's besides the point. He is a highborn and he is not going to be controlled by someone who crawled out of the mud like Christian Cole. So Crispy looks up and sees a dragon, a little shadow over the sun, and sees a dragon. He's like, no, we're going for cover now before we're seen. And Bela sees them, like spots them eagle eyed from way up above the clouds. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna get their asses. And then she swoops. She swoops, she chases them into the tree line, but of course, she loses them under the cover of the canopy. Now, she does look for them for a little while. She tries to peer through, but the canopy's too thick and she cannot see where they are or what's going on. Now, personally, I think she should have just completely torched it because, I'll do the same thing. But I guess, again, that's an escalation. We bring the dragons in, we start dragon war, then the other people bring their dragons in, then we have to bring more dragons, and they bring more dragons, and it just gets messy. I get it. But I really don't like Crispy. I do love that this is probably Gawain's first time seeing a dragon because he is clearly shook as they're sitting underneath the canopies looking up at Bela circling them overhead. He's freaked the fuck out. So Bela can't spot them. She flies back, and it does cut back to Christian Cole and Gawain, and he's like, my bad, dude. My bad. And Christian finally like has the whole like mask off crazy look that we are used to when it comes to him. He's like, listen, you have cost us the element of surprise. Now they know we're coming. So now we can no longer travel during the day. We have to travel by night. We have to travel through the forest and no fucking inns. And he's like, yeah, yeah, okay, okay, yeah, you have a point. Okay. So Bela goes back and she reports immediately to Rhaenyra and tells her, listen, Crispy's on the ground. She's got about a half dozen other knights. They are on the move. Another lord backs her up and says, yeah, I've got reports. There are a large number of forces. They are moving towards Harrenhal. We have to act. And all of the lords on Rhaenyra's war council are all urging her to loose the dragons and let's fucking go. So Rhaenyra is still dragging her feet. She does not want to escalate it. She's still trying to find a peaceful way out of this. We can see Jace is kind of side-eyeing her, and he's constantly got his hand on the hilt of his sword. He's getting more and more eager to get out there and fight, whether it's because he wants to avenge his brother or whether he is just getting that bloodlust. I don't know, but you can see that it's starting to awaken something in him, and he is ready. He wants his mother to start this war and really start fighting. Rhaenyra does a quick glance over it and remembers her conversation with Rhaenys and knows that there might still be a way to not have all of this bloodshed if we have this war. We've already seen in the opening scene what that means. What does an all-out war mean? And that did not even include a dragon. That was just men against men who really hate each other for no reason. We already know that the reason the Brackens and the Blackwoods are fighting are lost to history. They just hate each other to hate each other because they need something to do. So now, if they go to war, that's kind of the end result, are all of these dead people, and it could have been avoided. Rhaenyra walks out of the room. She's still trying to find a different way to go about this and resolve this problem. Back at Harrenhal, someone's knocking at Daemon's door. He's in this leaky castle. He's miserable. He's got the door barricaded because he's not going to let somebody kill a dragon rider in their sleep. And he is still looking for that fight when somebody comes up to the door and tries to enter. And he thinks that he is finally going to have a moment to like have an actual fight. Daemon grabs his bestie dark sister and works his way out into the hallway. He wants to see who was just trying to get into his door. He can't find anybody, so he continues down the pathway till he finds an open door with a room with a fire, and somebody's inside. He peeks inside and finds young Rhaenyra. And he gets in there, she's humming, and it looks like she's embroidering. But as you come around the corner, you see she is not exactly embroidering at all. What she's actually doing is repairing the neck wound of baby Jaehaerys. And in this moment, we can see the tears in Damon's eyes. He is clearly emotional, and immediately it cuts away, and he is under the weirwood in Harrenhal, and he's looking around and he's freaked out. He's like, "How the hell did I get here? I have absolutely no clue of how I got here." And then he turns around and he sees Alice Rivers, and she tells him that he's going to die in this place. Now, this, if you watch Game of Thrones, this was so much more compelling and visceral than when Melisandre, what was her name, said that to Varys. So I tend to believe her. Now, Damon's really freaked out about this, and I love this for him because it's one of those situations where, like, he is very anti-magic. He has established himself as he is like a very, very tight Targaryen. He's like, nothing can't be fixed with raw strength and dragons and fire and blood. And yet he has no idea. Did he get moved to this place? Did he sleepwalk? Did he get teleported? Like, how did he end up at this weirwood? Why is he here? And you can see in his face, he's terrified and he's powerless and he feels powerless in this situation, despite the fact that he always wants to be in control of every situation. Next, we get a scene with Rhaenyra and Missaria. She wants to know what Alicent Hightower is up to. She wants to figure out how she can have a conversation with Alicent and see if any of this can be avoided. Massaria is a little bit confused. She's like, "Do you just want to kill her? Because like we can work on killing her. Like if you just want to offer, like I can do that, or I can tell you how to get that done. But like talking to her is not like we can't just do that. You can't just talk to the Dowager Queen." And Rhaenyra's like, "I just want to talk." So Massaria is saying, like, "I can probably get a message to her if you want to talk to her." And Rhaenyra's like, "She's not going to want to talk to me, but she has to talk to me. So we need to find a way for me to sneak in so that I can make her talk to me." And Masaria's like, "It would honestly just be easier to kill her. Like, maybe we should just do that instead." So she does have an idea. Like, basically, I can sneak you in on a fishing boat and then we can just disguise you, right? And that'll get you in. But then it's a little bit up to you. You're gonna have to be sneaky. It's super dangerous. Don't dress up in any of your fanciful stuff. Like, you're gonna have to dress that shit down. You're gonna have to look like a commoner. We'll figure something out, but we can get you in. You can go to the Sept. You can talk to her there. But again, this is not the best plan, but it's the plan we've got, I guess. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna go. We're gonna do it live. We're gonna go. We're gonna sneak in. We're gonna take a fishing boat, and we're just going to blend in with the locals. So there she goes. Rhaenyra and a single solitary bodyguard sneak into King's Landing. She is the most awkward person. I wish they would have. I guess it's good that they didn't teach her how to walk because she's still walking royal. Like, she's not walking like the commoners. She's still very stiff, very uncomfortable. I think if people were really looking for somebody that was going to be sneaking into King's Landing and pretending to be a septa, like, she would 100% be the one it is. Because she does, even though she's in the clothes, she still sticks out like a sore thumb because she doesn't belong there and she doesn't look like she belongs there. She's not comfortable in the outfit. But of course, Alicent shows up right at the same time. Now, her bodyguard bows off and he's going to sit on the steps and he's going to wait for Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra heads in with the other septas and she's got herself a little knife. So hopefully she can at least kind of protect herself. We already know that's not how it works. I do like here how they point out that Rhaenyra is already at the table sitting there. So I guess the walk for Rhaenyra up to the Sept happens a little bit before Alicent arrived. They didn't actually happen at the same time like it looks like when they're intersplicing the scenes together. But Alicent comes in, she arrives. Rhaenyra's been there for an indeterminate amount of time already, and Alicent sits down to pray. Rhaenyra comes and stands right next to her and lights a candle of her own. And Alicent is side-eyeing her because why are you here when I'm here? Like, can you it's a big ass table. Why can't you find your own spot? So Alicent looks over and sees that it's Rhaenyra and immediately starts panicking. Rhaenyra pulls a knife. And again, why would you do that? Alicent's like, if I scream right now, you're going to die. And Rhaenyra's like, yeah, but if I stab you, we both die. So see how that works? And then we have one of those moments of levity where it's like, I started this really badly. Let's just start over. And Allison's like, "You think?" So they go on to start discussing like, how can we rewind this? Like, this is not how things are supposed to turn out. Remember when we were kids and things were easier? Remember when we were kids and things were different? Like, remember, like, my dad wanted me to be his heir, and you know it. She's Rhaenys told me that you did not want all of this bloodshed. And Allison's like, "Oh, so you came to surrender?" And Rhaenyra's like, "No, no, you're not hearing me. Like, this is my crown. Like, what can we do to avoid war? I just do not want any more war. Maybe there's a way that we can work something out. It's like maybe there's a way forward to peace. Like maybe there's some kind of terms. Maybe there's something that we can do to figure all of this out." And Allison's like, "There are no terms." Tells her, like, "You have no army, you have no leverage. People are turning against you after what you did to Jaehaerys." And Rhaenyra tells her, "It wasn't me. I did not do that to Jaehaerys." And Rhaenyra's like, "But again, I'm a mother and I would not have ever done that to your grandchild. Don't forget what your son did to my son. My son was also taken away." And Allison's like, I didn't condone that. I didn't like that." And Rhaenyra's like, "Yeah, but it still happened. It doesn't matter if you condoned it. It still happened. You let it happen." And then it goes right back to, what are we fighting for? Are we fighting because of Jaehaerys? Are we fighting against of Luke? Are we fighting because you just usurped my rightful inheritance? Again, the cycle just continues. One thing brings another, brings another. Allison says Viserys changed his mind. He changed his mind. He wanted Aegon to rule. And Rhaenyra is basically saying that, no, I talked to him that night and he said it was me. It's always been me. He did not change his mind. I talked to him. And Allison said, no, with his dying breath, he changed his mind. I heard him myself. So Rhaenyra gets a little bit salty. And she's saying, like, my father loved me. And I do believe that he loved you too. So how could you betray him and try and put your son ahead of me, ahead of his wishes? And Allison said, I am not. I heard him say the words, "I swear on my mother's grave." Now, if we remember back to season one, remember when they had the whole Rhaenyra slash Damon slash Crispy fiasco where Otto was trying to say that Rhaenyra and Damon coupled, and Alicent took her out into underneath the Godswood tree and confronted Rhaenyra about it, and Rhaenyra denied it, and she swore on her mother's grave. And that was the big wedge that drove them further and further apart, because when Alicent figured out that Rhaenyra lied, essentially lied because she had been with Crispy, not Damon, so it was like one of those, like, I didn't technically lied, but it was still a lie and it was still a betrayal. But she had swore on her mother's grave. Now to Alicent is super, super religious, and that means a lot to her that Rhaenyra would swear on her mother's grave, and she immediately took her word for it. And when she found out that she had lied and that she did couple with someone, it completely shattered their relationship and her trust. So now Alicent going back and saying she swears on her mother's grave, she's mocking Rhaenyra. She's like, remember that one time that you swore to me that this was the truth and I was expected to believe you? Well, now you believe me. I swear on my mother's grave. And she's using it as a callback to that. So Rhaenyra, of course, is speechless. What is she going to say? And she says, I have been unkind, but I've never lied to you. I thought you would be a great queen, but it's not what your father wanted. He changed his mind. And so Rhaenyra is staring at her and she's like, Rhaenyra looks at her friend and she realizes, yeah, like Allison is a lot of things, but she's never outright lied to me. She's been cruel, she's been mean. She has, contradicted and tried to embarrass me at every turn, but she has not ever lied to me. So she says, "What did he say? How did he tell you that I was disinherited? Did he actually say my name? What what did he say to you when he turned on me?" And Allison basically said that Viserys said that Aegon was the prince that was promised to unite the realm. And she's like, "Wait a minute, wait a minute. He talks to you about the Song of Ice and Fire?" And Allison's like, "No. What are you talking about?" And Rhaenyra's like, "No, no, no. He's not talking about Aegon, your son. He's talking about Aegon the Conqueror. This is a story that he would tell me about being the heir." And Allison, you can see it registers in her eyes immediately. I did a bad thing because we know already established years before that he was only had a loose grip on reality. He called Allison Emma. So she knows that he sometimes mistook her for a different person. He knows that he sometimes didn't know who or what he was talking to or when it was he was having a loose grip on reality. She realizes at that moment that she did make a mistake, and she tells Rhaenyra, "You've gotta go." And I think that that is her way of trying to make up too little too late, but make up for that mistake is to let Rhaenyra go. And Aaron's like, "No, no, no, you have to stay and talk this out." And he's like, "No, it's too late. My dad's gone. They fired Otto. It's Crispy and Aegon in town and Aemond. And you know what they are like. You know what they are capable of. You have to go. It's too late. I have no power anymore. I have no say. They're not going to listen to me. They're going to do what they're going to do. This is your one and only chance to escape. If you're going to go, go." She is also adamant that she hasn't made a mistake. And I don't think that she can even admit to herself. Like, I think she knows that she can't now admit to the opposite side that she's made the mistake. It was going to happen anyways because Otto and the rest of the small council were all plotting this. So she can kind of say in her mind that, like, yeah, I had a small role, but I'm not behind this. And she walks away. She's got to hold that. She has to believe, and she cannot let Rhaenyra know that she made this mistake, even though Rhaenyra knows and realizes, no, 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 this is partly your fault. You jumped to conclusion that he was talking about your son. This is your mistake. You did this. You are blocking me from my inheritance. So we end on that scene of her just staring at the into the flames at the altar. And we know, like, she probably makes it out. I can't imagine that she doesn't in the next episode. I loved this episode. It was a great episode. It was a very, very much storytelling heavy, and I like it. Like, it wasn't one of the best episodes. There wasn't constant action, but it was a maintenance episode. It needed to tell us all of the things we needed to get to the next episode. I love that they're taking their time right now. I love that they are letting the story breathe and they're taking time to develop the story and they're not rushing through it. So that makes me really happy. It was a really strong episode. It had some really great points, some really great storytelling points, and I am super super excited for the next one. So I'm going to leave it there. I feel like I've asked you a ton of questions to go sound out in the comments on, and I will see you hopefully a little bit more timely for next week's episode. Have a great one. Bye.